The following podcast, IDesign Lab, is an SW Group production in association with the Scott Woolley Entertainment Company and TW Interiors. This is IDesign Lab, a podcast where creativity and curiosity meet style and design. Curators of interiors, furnishings, and lifestyles. Hosted by Tiffany Woolley, an interior designer and a style enthusiast, along with her serial entrepreneur husband, Scott. IDesign Lab is your ultimate interior design podcast, where we explore the rich and vibrant world of design and its constant evolution in style and trends. IDesign Lab provides industry insight, discussing the latest trends, styles, and everything in between to better help you style your life through advice from trendsetters, designers, influencers, fabricators, and manufacturers, as well as personal stories that inspire, motivate, and excite. So whether you're listening to IDesign Lab in your car or in a cozy nook in your home, grab a coffee or a Chardonnay and join us on this elevated, informative, and lively journey into the world of all things design.
Welcome to the IDesign Lab podcast. My co-host today, my darling husband, Scott Woolley, is going to introduce our special guest.
Our special guest today isn't a designer or an interior designer, but many of our listeners have seen his work. His name is Michael Manasseri. Michael's an actor, a producer, a director. He began his acting career in community theater at the age of 10. Within a few years, Michael made his Broadway debut in Oliver and later toured with the late Yul Brynner in The King and I. Michael made his first big screen appearance as Charles in A License to Drive, which starred Heather Graham, Corey Feldman, and Corey Haim. After a number of sitcoms and guest appearances on shows such as The Wonder Years, Charles in Charge, Wings, Quantum Leap, and ER, Michael took on the role which he is best known for today, that of Wyatt Donnelly in the television series Weird Science. By 2005, Michael had jumped from in front of the camera to behind the camera as a producer and a director. As a producer and a director, Michael has been pumping out one or two documentary projects and films each year. Many of them have received great critical acclaim at film festivals around the planet. Michael, as a producer and especially as a director of a movie, is very involved in the overall design of the film, from the sets the film is shot on, to how they are decorated, to how they will be lit, to the costumes that the actors will wear. All of which leads us to why Michael is sitting in our studio today. We wanted to spend some time exploring the design process that a film or television show goes through. Really not that much different than what a homeowner goes through in designing and decorating a home.
Yeah. The attachment, the curation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is all correct. Wonderful introduction there, Scott. Thank you very much.
I know. And then I want to go back to a question that we saved from before, but I wanted to know, has Michael done a podcast yet?
I have done, I've done a couple of podcasts. Yes.
Well, he's probably done a few because he just recently won the 2020 Independent Spirit Award for a film that's out there right now. I think Netflix has it and Amazon.
So it's on iTunes and Amazon, but it came out theatrically last year. It's called Give Me Liberty.
Yep.
And premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2019, and then we went to Cannes, and then fortunately this year we won, it's called the John Cassavetes Award, which was the best feature film made for under $500,000.
So, director or producer on that?
I was one of the producers on that, yes. But back to what you were saying, yes, absolutely. Producing, directing, it's all about, it's all about the design. Mm-hmm. It's the designing of what an audience is going to see and take in on the screen, and all of the elements, all of the questions, they're really similar to what a designer would need to ask from a homeowner or a client.
So what part do you bring in your set designer? Like, we would be brought in when a client decides what plot of land they're going to build. They've selected an architect, a builder, like that whole team comes together at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Wondering, when does your set design, or is that part of, I know when you read scripts, they'll say, in a warm, cozy by the fire.
I mean, part of it is indicated in the script, usually in the scene directions or the action elements. Yes, of course, they'll talk about the environment. They won't talk too much about the environment there, But then once you have a director on board and then you start in pre-production to bring your team together, one of the first people you will bring on is a production designer. And that person is responsible for everything that you see on, whether it's the walls or in the rooms or in everything in that scene, not the costumes, et cetera, but it's a collaboration between director, producer, production designer, and those key department heads who are going to start asking all of those questions.
So it's similar to what an interior designer would be when it comes to the set design.
Yeah.
They're picking out.
Well, and I feel like set design probably has so many different facets as well. It's like a condo versus a townhouse versus a single family home. When it's a movie design versus like a sitcom, that's always been like something that's intrigued me in the background, like a sitcom design.
I mean, it's all going to come down. I mean, you could have a production designer for a sitcom and a production designer for a film. I mean, it's the same title, and they'll have people under them, just like an interior designer will have
an assistant.
Yes, we have people under them dealing with set dressing, dealing with construction, dealing with all those different elements of putting something together. The production designer with the director is calling all of the major shots. And yes, dealing with the details as well, but they'll delegate certain
do
things.
they really get down to details as far as accessories or drapery, colors, and
it depends. Look, it depends on, for example, if you have a homeowner.
Your budget.
It depends on your budget. It absolutely depends on your budget. Mm-hmm. And it also depends on, is your directing, producing team fastidious? Are they, how detail-oriented are they? There are some directors who just might be, I just want to, we're here, the building's here, let's just shoot, let's go. It is what it is. You have people like that. But usually, even at the smallest of budgets, if you care about the project, like a homeowner or someone will care about their house and what they're going to see every single day of their lives, all of that matters. So, I've been on projects where, it's just not just like what color are the walls or the wallpaper or the furniture, what is lying on top of the couch in this scene, what is on the table, what kind of silverware are they using? Well, that silverware doesn't match the 80-year-old character that we're dealing with. Right. That silverware would be something that a 20-year-old would get at IKEA. Correct. We're not going to use that. So, right. Yeah, it gets down to those details.
There's a fair amount of research that's needed to be done.
I was just going to ask too, do you have does this set designer, do they provide a presentation, a package to bring your plan? Do you give them like a really good synopsis of, I do mood images to try to, get where the client's head's at?
Well, it's very much like when Michael came into the facility here today, past one of your tables where you're preparing for one of your clients and you've got everything laid out.
Right.
It's very similar.
Yes, very much so. It's like if you're going to sit there and you go, well, here are the 7 materials I think are going to work out for the couch. Right. Or are going to work out for the curtains. And you're going to want to have this look. And the room is going to, we want the trim on the windows to match what's going on the walls. All of that comes into play. And a production designer, there's different phases of design, let's say, even for a movie. Because in the beginning, your director... So I'm working on a film right now. We're going to be shooting in Spain, hopefully,
Beautiful.
Sometime in the next 4 or 5 months, depending on what's going on in the world when we're making this podcast. People can, remember the pandemic of. But those. So there's a co-directing team on this project, and they're incredibly visual. And so when you're putting together a project in the beginning, and Scott knows about this, but you also know about this in terms of your particular work. You put together a lookbook, and that lookbook is basically to say this is the mood of the film. Yeah. This is what, it's everything. It's like it's the vibe of the entire picture. It's the style we want to go for, and it also comes down to to the lighting, to the styles, to the sets, to what we imagine, and then so from there, from that with this script, that will also go to the production design team, and that enables them to start now bringing their points of view, their talent, their experience to the table, because as a good producer, a good director, you don't want to be the one who dictates everything. You want to come with your ideas, but you want to hire people who also have great ideas.
Trust the expert.
Exactly, because otherwise you're a control freak and nobody wants to work with you. And because if you can't trust people,
agreed.
You know what I mean? It's like
you actually miss out, I feel like, on something. It's one of the things I do talk about frequently is when you do hire that person, a designer, set designer, interior designer, trust them, because otherwise you're missing out on what you brought them to the table.
Right. What are you're hiring them because of their past work and their years of experience. If I hire you, I want you to know a lot more than I know.
Right.
You know, and so it's the same way on a movie. If you're going to hire, and hopefully you can, look, when you start out in movies or you start out in TV, let's say movies, because TV is a different world in terms of money and budgets that are usually always there. But for films or independent films, a lot of times, in the beginning especially, you do not have a lot of money. You also may not be able to work with the most experienced people because you don't have a lot of money. And so
just
that
like
might
using
be
the best furniture manufacturers and the best fabrics.
Right. So that might be a learning experience where, maybe you're actually working with an art student. Maybe you're working with, somebody who's never production designed, but they've been an assistant on 3 other projects, but you're giving them a shot. And so maybe in that world,
they kind of sometimes step up on that.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
Tiffany, I think she forgets, but she's gone through a few of those types of projects. So I had a project, it was actually with Don Mishner, who's done a lot of award shows and specials. He had a special that he needed done for Spike TV, the network. And they were bringing in a design team from L.A., but the budget interfered with that. They couldn't do it. Last second, they called, because I was producing it, and they said, we need a house. I think it was about 14,000 square feet, decorated within like 3 days. I turned to Tiffany and I said, you got a quick project, 14,000 feet of furniture into a house. Right. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that happens.
So that was
a
a staging project, really.
Right, staging versus.
But a lot different from the normal process that you go through, where it's or pre-designed and time is being spent and it's being laid out.
Yep.
And no, I was going to go back to the Spain movie set. So is it being shot in Spain because you're looking to enjoy Spain take in some of
money,
that?
budgets, film incentives,
Right.
the production company that I'm working with, and all of this is maybe not a design part of the conversation, but it's basically because of the production company that I'm working with on that I'm partnering with.
So does the story set around Spain, or could be anywhere?
It could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere.
Right.
It could be anywhere.
Oh my gosh, what a bummer! Really.
But
Can't you put a twist in that?
well, listen. Certain things might actually. Now there might actually be more of a Spanish angle coming to it whenever this thing gets done. But the point of mentioning that project was about that lookbook, and that really, the co-directing team on it, they're so intensely visual.
Wow.
And so when they put their lookbook together to show to whether we're showing it to other investors or we're actually showing it to actors. Mm-hmm. So, to bring our actors on. Because, again, an actor, not only do they have to love the script.
You're enticing people
You're enticing
with
people.
Your lookbook.
Just like exactly. Just like when you're going to somebody who owns a 50,000 square foot mansion and you're like, this is why you should hire me to design this house.
Yep, evoking that feeling.
Yes.
To draw you in.
Yep.
Also, going on to the design part, how is lighting design carried on through? Because obviously there's lighting everywhere for set design, I would think. That has to be a huge thing incorporated into the...
It's really, as Scott mentioned in the beginning, it's all design. It really, really is. And it is lighting. That's what you call it. You call it lighting design.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
And so in terms of the director of photography that comes onto the project, and again, with the director, what kind of mood does the director want to set for the entire film, for certain sections of the film? You watch a movie and sometimes everything suddenly changes. They'll go, from maybe warm colors to this intense cold blue light, depending on what's going on in the story. So all of those design factors, it really is. It's a daily discussion
of detail
when you're in pre-production and when you're in production. It's 1,000 questions being asked every day and answered when you're shooting.
How closely does that lookbook generally reflect the finished product?
I would say usually it's really, really close. I mean, usually once you do those, the directors have done their research. They know where they're what could change it would be
Budget.
budget. Like, let's say we had a lot of money when we designed this, and all of a sudden we only have a fifth of that now, and that changes your locations. That changes, people that you hire also as well in terms of skill, let's say.
But the lookbook also helps guide you with the budget too.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you follow that lookbook, it's going to hopefully follow your budget to keep you on budget.
Right. You don't want to make a lookbook for what you think is a $50 million movie when you know you only have $5 million.
Right. Well, same goes for my part of the world too.
Yeah.
Definitely want to stay on target.
Yeah.
The difference that you have is that in a film or a television show, everything starts with the budget. In most interior decorating that I've experienced with you,
We don't like budget.
people don't, well, it's not that you don't like or we don't like, it's the fact that most people don't want to discuss or even mention what their budget is for a number of reasons. One is they don't want to mention it because they think that's what you're going to spend or try to spend a little bit more.
Sure.
They'd rather you spend a little bit less.
When I'd rather know a budget myself up front so that I can finish a product and, put it together as a cohesive plan.
I'm much more like that too. I mean, I would rather have people. I mean, look, sometimes I'm actually responsible for going and finding the money or even investing the money. So sometimes I'm on both sides a lot. Either sometimes I'm the investor producer, sometimes I'm the hired producer who comes on. If I'm the hired producer coming on, I just want to go to the investors and say, what do we have? Just tell me what we have so I can actually do this correctly.
From the beginning.
And there's no reason that you need to keep this a secret from me. That's how I go at it. That's how I approach it. Knowing, though, at times, like you said, they might not really be telling me everything.
So the other aspect of budget that I'll mention that I've noticed is that in the interior design
Because
side,
Scott is also crossing over.
Sure.
Scott has gone from major production background into really, really helping drive my bus right now.
right? But one of the things that I've noticed is, and you'll get a kick out of this, Mike, is that there's a percentage of clients that don't want to discuss the budget because they want to project to you that they have endless deep pockets when they, quite frankly, have a very limited or a very set finite amount of money, but they want to project to you that money's no object for me. I have it, whatever it takes. So there's an ego aspect
Interesting.
which
And
is very similar to us in doing projects and talking to investors.
Talking to potential investors.
Yes, we get.
Yes.
Where you sit with an investor who really wants to get in it because of whatever the reason is, but at the end of the day,
When it comes
they
down
don't
to
quite,
writing
they don't quite have the the they claim they have.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
There'll be a couple of nice lunches. Sometimes we will end up paying for those lunches, and yes. And then when it comes time for the pens and the paper, things like that, things suddenly change.
Which is a little of what Tiffany experiences with some clients, and then she has to work through that to try to help them manage, what they can spend and what their expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
So for her, it's a little bit tougher. At the end of the day, doing a movie or a film, if you don't have it, you can't do it.
Right.
Have you ever personally worked with an interior designer?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
What about for a movie, or has there ever been that part?
I think that on some commercial work, so I've done, similar to Scott. Mm-hmm. I've produced numerous commercials as well as films and TV. I do mostly.
Michael's also starred in he's been in a number of commercials himself. McDonald's.
I'm sure you could recognize your voice anyway.
Wow,
Familiar.
you're taking it back to the beginning, man. You're taking it back. Lots of commercials, yes. But as a producer on commercials, I've worked with some interior designers for homes and things like that that we've had in commercials, but really everything else has been more of production designers. So, But again, you're designing a house. You're designing a house. You're going back to the sitcom,
Right.
to the house in the sitcom. I mean, it's the same question. What's the couch? What's the color?
So
What's
the houses in the sitcoms, for example, when there's a stairs and they're going upstairs, are they really going upstairs?
They're not. They're going upstairs, but they're not going anywhere. They're going to a landing.
Unless it's a real house.
But in a sitcom.
No.
Well, how
Right,
many?
sitcom, no.
Like,
And it doesn't have.
so sitcom is technically
Most
on a soundstage.
Situation comedy I don't know. I mean, maybe now. But in the days when I was doing situation comedies, it was always live audience. Live audience
Like
on a
Schitt's
stage.
Creek or
So you didn't
something
have
like that.
you didn't have four walls that you were dealing with to decorate as
Right.
well.
Right. You
There
usually
was
have
more
3 walls.
illusion, I
Right.
guess.
Or sometimes two if the budget was less.
So if you go to, well, maybe a lot of people have now, but so that TV show that I used to be on called Weird Science. So we shot that at Universal Studios. Real fortunate. We were there for 4 years. And almost everything was on a soundstage. Sometimes we go out into the world. But when we didn't go out into the world, and we would go to the back lot. Okay, so if you
Is that
visited,
what we see?
yes, well, if you visited, a lot of people have visited
Paramount
Universal
there,
Studios and gone to the back lot. So those houses, so my character lived in a neighborhood, and we would, get off the bus and we'd go to our house, and then you'd enter the house and you'd shut the, on the other side of the house, there's nothing.
Right.
It's just a facade.
I know.
So that's, it's a movie magic that everybody kind of knows by now.
So how do they kind of, in the scope of the television world, decide what is going to be on a soundstage and what's going to be in a, like, I know now, like, The Bachelor, per se, has a house. Like, it's now, like, The
Right, so
Bachelor
that's-
house. But for years,
For years, I mean, before there were houses like that, no, it was just you would build your sets on.
Right.
But it all came down to the production designer. The production designer was in charge of all of that. And then they would delegate, again, there'd be construction, there'd be a lead man, there'd be his crew, there'd be set dressers, there'd be plant people who would be in charge of the plants, the fake plants,
Same,
the real
okay,
plants.
wow.
All of that.
The
It's staging.
prop people
It's
with all
staging.
It is
the little
staging.
accessories.
Right.
which staging became a big thing in our industry as well. I don't necessarily do staging, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is another part of interior design that crosses over into set design,
Yeah.
especially in the word staging.
Well, I consider staging to be temporary.
Temporary. It is. Typically,
Temporary
you stage
interior
to sell a
decorating.
house is like the main reason somebody stages. Mainly.
Sure. I would say on soundstage, you never know how long the show's going to go.
It's
staging.
pretty much the same. Staging, because of a stage, it's temporary. It's not
Yes.
there permanently.
Right.
And then so like on shows, for example, I never really watched Friends myself, but like
Okay,
I know
but
people
everyone else on the
in the
planet,
world
yes.
did. And it wasn't because I didn't like Friends. It was just I think I had to go to bed at that time. But how many sofas, for example, do you think really exist of the famous red
Now?
couch?
Isn't there a whole line?
Right, there
It's
is.
like Pottery Barn
Yes,
or something? I don't know.
It
or-
is. It
It's the
absolutely.
Friends Furniture
Friends
Collection?
Furniture Collection.
Yes. So I would think now there are a lot. Now they're mass produced in a factory somewhere.
Unbelievable.
Oh.
Unbelievable. Those are trends.
But for the show itself, in the beginning,
Yeah.
there was probably one. They probably only had two.
Oh yeah, they probably beat it up, and like once
Yeah,
a year they'd bring in a new one just to because the other one
Refresh.
Yep.
or if they just like the beat up look because it was supposed to be an apartment
of that.
forever. So yeah,
It's a lot like a movie, and certain aspects of a movie, especially wardrobe, depending upon the movie, they may have multiple jackets or multiple whatever it is for that particular part.
So, for example, like when you were on Weird Science for 4 years, did you have the same bedroom for 4 years, or
pretty
did
much.
they? Yeah,
No, pretty much. I
Like
mean,
they-
unless you made it an aspect in an episode of the show of I want a new bedroom,
Right.
Then it would. But otherwise, no. I mean, like the little living room, the kitchen, the fake stairs going up the stairs
Right.
to nothing. That didn't change. That barely changed. I mean,
so the
maybe
set
the
was
product-
always in place.
It was always in place, but of course, I mean, if a little bit of time went by, maybe the set dresser or production designer would say, "Hey, let's change up these flowers on top of the table," or something like that. I mean, if something was going to be intensely featured in an episode, then of course they would just make sure that whatever's being featured has to do with that period of time, that episode, etc.
Well, that's another difference of interior decorating for home and then compared to the entertainment industry, because it's all temporary.
right.
I mean, think of, you did a couple of sets for me, balancing act you did
when you
we
guys
first
set
launched
them up
that.
and took them down quite a
Right.
bit.
You helped me. You put together a set for the CNBC show that I did with Jack Kemp.
Yeah.
Okay, that was temporary. That lasted the same exact set for the 4 years the show was on the air.
And we used the chairs for the foyer of the building.
Right, but once the show was over, everything either went
Goes
in
away.
the garbage or got donated or given away to someone.
Repurposed.
And
Repurposed.
in Los Angeles, you know, depending upon the studio or the facility, it goes into a warehouse to maybe
Yes,
be used
in the
later
warehouse
on.
with 2,000 other sofas.
And typewriters. I feel like whenever you see those pictures, it's like the old-fashioned typewriters and the
I mean, but there's also, so for example, this movie that I did last year called Give Me Liberty, that was all real locations in Milwaukee. We had a production designer because certainly in some of those I would say real locations, but for example, there would be a house that we would be shooting in that would end up being the house for a family in the movie. Obviously not the family who lived in that house. So, of course, things would have to be adjusted and redone,
pictures.
etc.
Do they do all that?
Yeah, all that stuff.
So do they do pictures? This is a total sidebar. When they're using pictures of a real person, which is actually an actor, do they put the old, like when you're like, so you were on a show and in the picture frame is you as a toddler. Is that really like your mom giving them toddler pictures?
For those kinds of things.
That. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
on that
it's
note.
fine. For those kinds of things, they would certainly ask for old pictures and stuff like that if they want it to be you. Or they'll Photoshop stuff now. They'll say, give us a
that's true.
picture and we'll Photoshop your head.
Totally. Okay, got it.
Into this other picture. But but again,
Back to the house.
that aspect of production design for a movie of the budget of Give Me Liberty, which was also, everything about that movie was authentic. I mean, we had 2 real actors in the whole movie. Everybody else played basically a version of themselves. And the 2 real actors that we had, they were both from Russia.
Wow.
Okay? So, and if you see the movie, by the way, please go see the movie. It's called Give Me Liberty. Or you can click on something now. And
Where can you find it?
you can iTunes, Amazon. I mean, it's on almost every platform.
And everybody's
now.
got a lot of sofa time right now, so
There you
no
go.
excuses.
It's a
by our
feel-good.
next.
It's a feel-good comedy. New York Times loved it. LA Times. A lot of people love this movie. But in terms of production design on that's for what that movie is and the authenticity of the people and the characters in the film, our production designer on that one probably had to do a completely different style of research, of work, than what he could have done in the movie that he did just before that. I mean, it's
Starting
it's
from scratch.
Milwaukee, 2018, blue-collar neighborhoods, different cultures. There's a big Russian element in the film. We are also in the African American community in the film. Also, that film deals a lot. It has a lot to do with disabled adults and where they live and where they work. And so all of these different factors, going to those real places, but even within those real places, what are the things the production designer has to change for the director's vision? Just so many details. This is an aside from, let's say, interior design or production design, but chicken plays a very big part in that movie. Literally, the making of chicken. So there's a Russian grandfather character.
Is it almond chicken
He's
or
in his
whatever?
80s. No, but he's Russian, and it's very important that he makes his chicken. Okay? Like the whole movie, this guy's got this thing about making chicken, okay? And
What do you mean making chicken?
cooking chicken.
Oh,
cooking
cooking chicken,
chicken
okay.
a certain way. Preparing the chicken.
recipe.
And so in the beginning of the movie, he should not be cooking, and he is making chicken, and he's in his 80s and a little forgetful. And let me just say, the dynamics of the entire film shift because of chicken. But the point of this story, and this might just be an aside, but I think this is funny, and it's about independent filmmaking. It's about small budgets. It's about design. So we are on maybe our 2nd or 3rd day of shooting, and we are working in this apartment building where a lot of the film was based in Milwaukee, where a lot of Russian immigrants have come over.
I had
and
no idea to Milwaukee.
Yes, there's a Russian American, a Russian basically community in Milwaukee. I didn't know this until I signed on to the film. Right. And so anyway, we were in this building, and we were in the social room. That's where we basically had our base camp, where we all would meet and talk, have our meetings, have our lunches, etc. And so I walked in this morning. It's really early. Everyone's tired. And I see the production designer talking to his assistant. And the look on her face, I knew something was wrong. It's a podcast. Nobody can see what I'm doing. But like jaw dropped. Oh my God, something is wrong. And as a producer, I already know immediately, well, these are the problems that I'm supposed to be solving. No, I don't want anybody to have a face like that. Something's wrong. And so I went up and I said, what's going on? And the production designer turns to me and goes, somebody stole the chicken.
So was he actually cooking the chicken?
Well, in the film, a character is walking around with chicken a lot, okay? Frozen chicken, walking around with chicken. And then eventually, yes, the chicken gets cooked. But we had 20 pounds of frozen chicken, that was left in the freezer that night because we thought, or the people thought, who's going to take 20 pounds of frozen chicken? But I showed up and, this was a really difficult movie to make for many reasons, and it was a wonderful experience, and the movie turned out great.
Did you taste the chicken?
Eventually, I had the leg when it was cooked. But like that chicken, even in a production design, a movie sense, that chicken was working in like the next scene. That frozen chicken was supposed to be in the next scene, and we didn't have the frozen chicken, and now we had to go out and get 20 pounds of frozen chicken, and he only had a set budget. So basically,
you had to pay for the chicken.
Well, we had to pay for the chicken, but it was just like it's 7 a.m. in the morning. Where are you going to go to get 20 pounds of frozen chicken? That's going to work at 8 a.m. Anyway, so that's my chicken story. So, but that's in dealing with a production designer talking about chicken.
That's just so funny.
Yes.
At least it wasn't pickles.
That was good. Yes. I made a pickle movie. For those of you that just went, what are they talking about this as a pickle movie?
And he gave out pickle pens at the premiere. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
pens.
I still
It was a hilarious
It
movie.
was a great movie.
Thank you.
It's another one people should watch. Yeah.
There you go. You're sitting at home. You want to watch a feel-good movie, The Pickle Recipe. So yes, that one I directed, and dealing with production design on that. Similar questions, how do we want the pickles to look? I mean, really, how do we want them to look?
What's the canister going to look like? What are they going to
What are
serve
the jars
them
going
in?
to look like? All of that, yeah.
That is just so interesting. Which is one of the reasons when I started the podcast is I just feel like everybody has such amazing stories to tell. And I mean, you probably could go on for hours with the exception of even design, just all the stories that you daily.
When it comes to, and Scott knows this too, when it comes to production, the stories, actually the stories can be more interesting than the actual films and TV shows that are being made. The stories behind it, because the other thing about it is
writing them.
I think some people are, but if you're bringing 50 or 100 people together to work on a project, which also means you're bringing 50 to 100 people and their stories and their personalities
I find it so fascinating.
and their problems. So it is fascinating.
And everyone works together closely, tightly, as a great unit, almost becomes a family, and 30 days later, everyone's gone.
Stay in touch with them?
It's interesting. So some I absolutely do, but you do realize over time, if you've done this long enough, that you do absolutely go, man, I was so close with those people for 2 months, and none of us talk to each other anymore. Because what happens is you then, if you're fortunate enough to keep doing this, you're a couple months later, you're on to the next one, and you're on to the next one, and you keep having these really intense, almost familial relationships. And everybody keeps going on to the next one. And they're usually very intense. They take up all your time. So you're really, you're in it when you're in it. And then you're...
But it's the same thing with interior decorating. Like some of the projects you have right now.
Too, I love them. They become family for me. I love knowing about their children. I love watching
But it's also the vendors,
the
vendors, the crew, the people who are the subcontractors.
All of them.
Right. And there's certain ones
their
you become very friendly with, and then that project's over.
And everybody's got to move on.
I know.
Everybody's got to make a living.
Right.
Yep. But I think in the interior design side, and your side of it, is the ones that are really good. You're reaching out to them again.
I guess that's what I was trying to ask before, Michael. Is there they're your go-tos, for example?
Certainly as a producer and a director now, it is more like that. I mean, for example, when I went off to Milwaukee to make Gimme Liberty, I didn't know any of the people in Milwaukee. So that group of people, they were all new to me, and they were wonderful, incredible, and I've worked with some of them since then on other projects. But in terms of my regular go-tos, because for a long time I've been based out of Detroit, I certainly have, as a producer, I have directors I work with regularly. I have other producers, production designers, et cetera. I will keep going back to, and I'm sure it's similar with you in the business. Once you can actually trust someone, and if they're doing a good job, that's important.
So important.
So you want to keep working. I mean, if you can keep working with friends that you trust,
right,
that are there for you,
bring
that you can rely on, that's the best. That's the best.
I agree.
It's pretty much like, for me, with the specials that I do, TV specials, I use the 4 to 5 same people travel with me and that have particular important positions, but the rest of the crew, 50, 60 people, are all hired first time and typically, unfortunately, last time, because it's typically in another state.
Right, it's in another city.
Those 4 to 5 key people have been with me for years.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing set design in a key city, do you hire the set designer from that area, or who do they bring you?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily for production design. It's a similar thing where if you can bring someone you work with and you've trust in the past and they're right for this project. Look, there are people that I've worked with who I know are wonderful, but I know they're
Not a
right
good
for
match.
something. They're not right for something else. So, that's where I will depend on other people that I'm working with, references, things like that, and we'll bring somebody in that we feel is really, really right for the project. But usually with cities, if you're talking about that would be locations people, things like that. Or maybe we'll bring in a key location person, but then they'll hire everybody locally because those local people are going to know the answers to the questions.
So when you do hire a location scout, do they then look into hiring, like if somebody wanted to film a movie in Delray Beach, for example, like how do you go about your location?
I mean, so let's say they wanted a 3-bedroom house on the water in Delray. I mean, the location scout would be given basically instructions from the location manager, from the production, from the producers. This is the kind of house we're looking for. This is the kind of money that we have. And
so do you rent it, or?
The scout would go out and knock on doors, call people, leave flyers, basically I drives by a house and says, man, that house is perfect. Usually we'll take a flyer and say, hey, we're thinking about filming on a property like yours. We'd love to talk to you about it. Please give us a call at such and such number if you're interested. That person would call back, and then it's a conversation. You describe what the situation is, and then
they're interested.
Visit, see inside, and it's money. So
most major cities there's people who are location scouts.
My house growing up was used for a movie.
Grand Rapids?
No, in Boca.
Oh, okay.
In Boca Raton in here. Yeah, Michael and I both have Michigan connections. But I remember that it was Little Women of the 1990s or something. It was an Italian film.
Oh.
And
Little Women or Little?
It was an Italian, but it was like Little Women of the night. It was like a remake of Little Women.
Okay.
But
the Italian remake of Little Women?
Something like this.
This sounds hilarious. Why did I not produce this?
I know, and I actually want to look back and see it these days because they hosted a party there, and it just was like my whole family moved out for a week.
Sure.
But I was able to stay because my mom was like, you need to still go to school. You're in high school.
You need to have a very unusual temperament pertaining to owning a house and allowing a crew to come in and take it over.
I'm just going to say
we needed new carpet.
I'm going to say this. If you are listening, and if somebody comes to you because they want to use your house for a movie or a commercial, you probably should just say no.
That's why I said you need an unusual temperament.
Right, or they're going to give you a lot of money because your house will be taken over. It will be taken over. It will be taken over by 50 human beings who might want to be respectful of that property.
There was catering trucks outside. There was,
But now it's just their workspace.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So.
And they will move everything and anything, and
yeah,
it's a deal.
And they will try not to break things. try not to
Correct.
break things.
That's like the opposite, I guess.
Yeah. Watch, I'm going to need a house for a movie, and someone's going to say, I heard you on a podcast.
Well, this is so fun.
Yes, it is.
I know.
Well, I'll say one thing briefly. So around 2004, 2005, when I actually started to produce, that is also right around the time I met the Woolleys.
Is that what it was?
Yes, it was. Yes, the first movie that I produced. That
Well, let
went
me
to
tell you this.
Sundance.
So, not Santa Monica, Melrose. It was on Melrose, I believe.
Yes.
And I remember pulling into a parking lot and
Fred Siegel.
That's correct. Fred Siegel.
The guy who owns Fred Siegel now lives in Boca.
Okay.
So Fred Siegel, the clothing store on Melrose. Remember pulling in the parking lot and all the trailers and so forth, and we got guided into a shoe store. And it was a pretty funky, I remember, really outrageous shoe store with
Well, if it was
wild
Fred Siegel.
walls and colors. And was it Fred Siegel? I don't think so.
The
was
property was Fred Siegel, but I think we took over the space,
Right,
and
and
we did.
And that's where I met you, I think, first time was in that shoe store.
Okay, in that fake shoe
Which
store.
was a fake, it was a real shoe store, wasn't it?
Oh, maybe it
watch
was.
this
But
one,
we
too.
had
But it was an interior design. You talk about interior design. That was, I don't think it was interior designed or built for the movie. It was there, I think, but it was quite a set, unusual set for a shoe store, not your typical shoe store.
Yeah,
but it also wasn't the typical movie. Because
No,
I
it was
remember
not.
having a conversation with you after I met you, and then, what was it, Jenny McCarthy comes walking by
yes.
asking you a question, and then Carmen Electra comes walking in and shooting a scene, which was
guys.
Those were the days.
yeah,
yes.
and it was a pretty outrageous scene too.
Yes, it was. That's right. Wow. Yeah. I mean, look, I remember Fred Siegel. That's about it. Good memory, Scott.
All I remember is the fish.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God, I kind of vaguely remember this story.
This is when we changed the subject.
Yeah.
Yes.
Back to interior design of fresh flowers.
And then I came to Del Rey. About
I
4 months
know.
later, I came to Del Rey.
Right. Then we ended up doing a project with William Shatner together.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
I know we have a fun history that's only just begun.
That's right.
And look forward to embarking on some more fun.
I look
projects.
forward to more iDesign podcasts.
Thank
Yes,
you.
very
Thanks
much.
for joining us today.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
iDesign Labs podcast is an SW Group production in association with the Scott Woolley Entertainment Company and TW Interiors. To learn more about iDesign Lab or TW Interiors, please visit twstyle.com.